This is the code in action video for chapter 11. In chapter 11, we learned how to create a GraphQL API in our backend. So now first, create a new terminal, go to the backend and install the dependencies. Now we can run the backend. And we now go to the backend server on localhost port 3001/GraphQL to get to the Apollo server sandbox. So here we are in the sandbox now, and we have on the left an overview of all the queries that our GraphQL server supports. Then in the middle we have a box to put in our operation, which we can run with the button. And then on the right side we have the response of our request. So now let's try making our first query. For example, let's do the test query first. And this is quite simple. It just gets the test field. And if we run it, we get hello world from GraphQL. So our GraphQL server is working fine, and we can now move on to more complex queries. On the left, we can deselect a field to remove it again. And then we can select another field, for example, getting all posts. And this field actually contains other fields. So here we can add the author, and for each author we add the username and all the posts that the author has. So this will return all posts, and for each author, all the posts that the author has, and of those posts, maybe we return just the title. Then we go back in the navigation here to posts, and for each post, we don't want just the author, we also want the contents and the title, and maybe updated that and the ID. So now we can run this query, and as we can see, we get a list of posts. And for each post, we get the author with their username and all the titles of all the posts that this author wrote. And then we get the contents of the current post, the title, and the ID. And so we get a list of all posts here. So here we have the test post, for example, and all the other posts that this author wrote. So as we can see, GraphQL is very powerful for making these nested queries. Next, let's have a look at mutations. For that, we go back to the root and then we deselect the query. And now we go into mutation. And here we can start with the sign up user mutation to create a new user. And you can see that at the bottom here, it added two variables for us already, which is the username and the password for the new user. And as a response, we need to add a response. So for the response, we add a username field just to see that the user we just created was actually successfully created. Now let's put in a username of a user that does not exist yet, and a password. Now we can execute this mutation. And we can see that we successfully get a response, and we have created a user called test user. We can now log in with this same user by going back to mutations and then deselecting sign up and selecting login instead. So now we have a login user mutation, and this will return a string, which is the JSON web token. So we already have the variables here for the username and password. So let's run it. So you can see that we got the JSON web token here now. We're gonna copy that because we're gonna need it later. And now deselect the login user and select the create post mutation. And here we want to provide a title for our post and the contents for our post. And in the response, we want to get the ID of our newly created post and the title. So now let's remove these old variables here and give a title to our post and some contents. And now we need to go to the header section, add a new header, name the header authorization. And then as value, we put in bearer and then space, and then the token we copied. And we just need to make sure that this is properly copied here. So this should be fine. And now we can submit the mutation. And here we can see that it was successfully submitted. We created a new post with an ID and a title as the currently logged in user. Now, if we want to make sure that this is really from the currently logged in user, we could now go to the fields, add the author field, and here it provides us with the same options that we had in the query. We can also get the username and a list of all posts that the author has. So let's do the same here, run the mutation again. And here we can see that the test user has 2 posts called hello from GraphQL because we made 2 mutations like that. So as we can see, GraphQL is very powerful for these kinds of nested queries and mutations, and we could do anything that we did with the REST API also with our GraphQL API now. In the next chapter, we are going to implement this GraphQL API in our frontend.